Welcome back. You have made it to Living Limitless. Play your way to freedom. I'm Andrea Luzon. I'm here to join with you as you connect, play, and awaken your power, your freedom, and your expansiveness. I'm so excited to have with me a friend, a woman I've known for a while, a woman whose growth has just been off the charts in the last handful of years. And I'm so excited to have met her as she was rising and now she's flying. So if you don't already know Pi Venus Winslow, I would love for you to experience her as a published author, public speaker, and transformational life coach. For those recovering from a narcissistic upbringing, Pi's mission is to empower others to reclaim their authentic selves and live intentionally free from codependency and narcissistic abuse. So, Pi, thank you so much for coming on with us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea.
I would love, in your own words, would you tell us a bit more about your work and really what inspires you to stay in the work that you are doing?
Certainly. So, I am the daughter of a narcissistic mother, and I also had an alcoholic father. And so, my childhood was very challenging growing up, and I didn't realize that my mother was a narcissist until probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And so, I knew that my childhood, that I had issues with my childhood because I could actually see my father physically drinking. I could make that connection.
Mhm.
However, I could never fully understand what it was about my mother that drove me crazy and set me off into a spin for like days or weeks at a time. And so when I did finally make that connection, that was like where like the light bulb went off in my head. And I realized that growing up with a person like that affected me on such a deep core level. Like my entire identity was affected by my experience of growing up with a narcissist that I realized like, "Oh my goodness, like what did that do to me?" And that was really the moment when my work the work that I do now
Mhm.
with other people, but my work that I got to do on myself, that's when that started. And so it's been an adventure, it's been a journey. I'm still on my journey. I'm still unraveling and unpacking myself. There are many, many more layers because this was my lifetime, years and years and years, my childhood development, everything I learned about who I was, I really get to look at. And I as an adult now, I get to look and examine that and ask myself, well, is that really true? And if it's not true, to let those beliefs go and really embrace my truth of who I am and who I get to be.
Right.
And so I help other people now. When I was going through it in the dark depths of my shadow work, crying on the floor, total identity crisis. I vowed that when I figured it out, when I figured out how to get to the other side, I was going to help other people do the same. And so that's why I do what I do now, and that's always my why. Why I go back. I go back to that over and over again. Um, During the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. It's like, I'm here. The reason I went through everything I went through was to learn and to grow and to expand and to step into my authentic self. And I get to I get to show other people how to do it too, so that they can find themselves and recover and heal.
Mhm. Wow. I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing a bit of myself, actually. I'm hearing a bit of some at some point, hopefully, we all get to a point in our lives where we realize that some of the personality that we've created, some of the actions, behaviors, patterns that we've created, possibly all of them, but a lot, maybe the louder ones we created because of our experience in childhood
Mhm,
or early adulthood. And we created these like masks or coping mechanisms to get us through that time. And then we get to adulthood, and we get to question, is this who I want to be? Is this who I authentically am? Or is this the survival skill that I created to get through having narcissistic parents, or an alcoholic parent, or a not present parent, or we could go, we could give a lot of examples of peers and society and teachers and family.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. There's so many influences, for us when we're growing up, when we're developing. It's like our brains are like when we're born, we have these small little brains that are like they're little sponges, and they grow as we grow. And there are studies that show that that brain development doesn't actually complete until almost the age of 25.
Mhm,
So our brains are still developing, and as children, we don't they're not developed. Our brains are not developed enough to make sense of complicated adult situations. We don't understand that our parents are going through their own things, and that they're human too, and they have their own traumas and issues. We think as children, because we're children, we think it's us.
mhm,
We think we control everything. We are the center of our universe. So we think it's because of us. And then we learn as we grow, we're influenced by the feedback that we get from our parents, from our siblings, other family members, from our friends, from our teachers, from religion, from media, everything. We take that information in and we store it away in our minds, and then we go back to it and we attach meaning to it,
mhm,
and we try to make sense of the world. And we have thoughts from what we experience. And every time we think that thought again, we reinforce that thought. It becomes stronger. And the more we think it, it becomes a belief. And then
mhm,
that gets filed away. And that's in our subconscious. And so later in life, when we go through this journey of finding ourselves, trying to figure out who we are and what it means, what our lives mean for us here on this planet, what we're doing here. It is a gift, and it's like an honor and a privilege to help people go back, to go into those questions and ask themselves, well, when did you when do you remember first starting to believe that? Or what happened to make you believe that? And what if that's not true?
mhm.
Right? And to open up the possibilities and think like, wow, like I can change my mind. Like I can literally change my mind
Yeah.
about anything. But unless we're aware that we think these things, we don't we don't make that connection. We just continue to operate on this subconscious program that we've been operating on for our entire lives. It's well worn into the fabric of our mind, in our brain system, in our patterns, hardwired, call it wiring. It's like a well-worn highway. We just go back to it over and over again. It's a habit. And it's such a habit, we don't even think about it anymore. It's just there. We just keep going back to those thoughts, beliefs, and those patterns, even though they may not serve us anymore.
Yeah.
So,
That is reminding me of I don't know if it qualifies as a poem, but a saying that I learned, through spending time with doctors Ron and Mary Hulnick, and I may misquote it, but it goes something like this. The An alarm went off, or I heard an alarm, the dishwasher broke. I learned that alarms break dishwashers. Like, that's just the whole poem, the whole share, and it's such a plain and simple example, but it's also it's concrete. A sound equaled something not working or, something breaking, but it's similar to, like, my parent yelled at me a lot. My parent rarely came to my softball games. My parent showed up at my softball games. When we talked later, I received a critique about how I play softball or how I didn't do softball well or something. And so I learned that I'm not valuable unless I do things perfectly or something, it's just so interesting because we can take something like alarms and dishwashers just simply coinciding, and then how our brain can program itself and to an experience that we had, and we make the leap that this is true about who we are inside.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, certainly, narcissistic abuse follows a lot of patterns. There's a lot of criticism, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of manipulation, there's a lot of control. And for a child, it's, like, children rarely think there's something wrong with my family, right? It's like
Right.
if it's your family, if you're in it, like, you don't know. You
Right.
don't know there's a different way. And if you've grown up with, in an environment that was, like, traumatic or abusive, it's like you just think that's the way it is. And you learn how to survive in it.
Mhm.
And, so you don't know. You don't have anything to compare it to. You don't have a different experience to compare it to. And you may consciously realize later in life, like, wow, there were some times in my life where, I experienced some things that were, not right.
Mhm.
You may not realize how profoundly those things impacted you. And what happens for children who grow up in childhood trauma, and abuse, is that they end up recreating the same situations later in life with other people. They reenact, and they are comfortable with, those types of situations. They've learned how to handle narcissistic situations. They've learned how to handle that kind of abuse. They've survived it, and their brain is familiar with it. And so what ends up happening is they'll attract that energy, those types of people, to them,
Yeah.
because they've been groomed and programmed, you know, to be codependent and coexist with a narcissistic person. So they'll often, end up having narcissistic bosses, teachers,
Mhm.
friends, intimate partners,
Yeah.
and then they find themselves again and again and again being traumatized, and stuck. in patterns and cycles, and not understanding, not realizing that that's that's the way they grew up. Like, it's a perfect match, right? You're groomed and you're grown to be in relationship with somebody like that. So until you recognize what somebody like that is and how you've been groomed and programmed to be dependent with them,
Mhm.
you can't change. You can't shift and change. So it's a lot of work. The good news is, though, the good news is that it can be done, right? It's just we need that mentor or that coach or that guide or that teacher or somebody to show us there is a different way.
Yeah.
There is a different way to be. There are different types of relationships out there, and you can have those, but we've got to change that internal program, that that operating system that you're working off of. We need to upgrade the program. We need to
Right.
upgrade to the next version of you, right? And that it's expanding, it's growing, and it can be really scary and hard to even like want to try to learn to grow and do better, because people who are codependent or grew up with narcissists tend to be really hard on themselves because they believe they are the reason they were treated so badly. And so there's a lot of there's a lot of self judgment, there's a lot of criticism, there's a lot of shame,
Mhm.
and a lot of pain. And it takes time, and it takes somebody to help you see where your thinking got messed up, and to help you learn how to think differently and to practice
Mm.
the process of thinking differently, because like anything new, it requires practice. It's like a new language. You gotta be like immersed in it to really like learn to speak it fluently. So to be away, like remove yourself from people who are not influencing you positively, and surround yourself with support, community, a leader, a coach, a mentor to help you learn new
Mhm.
ways of thinking, being, feeling, experiencing life. That's what really helps and makes a big difference for people. It's pretty much impossible to do it on your own, because you don't know what you don't know, right? So
Yeah. This is coming
yeah.
through loud and clear. Very it feels very poignant, and I've been exposed to your work, and it's inspiring, and I really feel like you allow yourself to be a container and offer guidance and support. And what I find interesting is that with coaches, the accountability piece,
Mhm,
the piece about, have you done the XYZ exercise, or the piece of the practicing, the piece of the unlearning of these
mm,
messages that we keep sending ourselves. Are you practicing the unwinding of that ticker tape that's going in our, it's just playing and playing and playing and playing because we allowed ourselves to be programmed so heavily. So
mhm,
I'm really hearing all of the support and the guidance and the holding the and helping someone hold themselves accountable to getting to live the better life.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and usually, the accountability piece is like, like people they want the results, but going through the process, it can be scary and it can be painful.
Mhm.
So, not having that support growing up, many many people on this journey think they've got to do it alone. They think, well, I've always had to do it alone. Nobody's ever helped me. I never had support. I don't know what it looks like to be supported. And so that in itself, that experience of having that support and that accountability, the nudges, the reminders, the challenges, the cheering on, right? Like,
Mhm.
come on, you can do it. Like, let's break it down. What's the resistance? What's coming up? Like, let's work through it together. That's a whole new experience for people, and it opens them up in tremendous ways, to learn how to trust other people, and then, like, ultimately to learn how to trust themselves. Because narcissistic abuse really does a number on people. I mean, narcissists literally make people question their own reality. And so if you can't even rely on your own perceptions and reality, it's a very unstable and turbulent, way to live your life. It's like never knowing, like, am I crazy? Am I right? Did I really see that? Did I really experience that? Um, I mean, narcissism by definition is crazy. It's crazy making behavior. It's crazy behavior. It doesn't make any sense. And like, I for one, I am I am so I'm so relieved, and I'm happy. And it's funny to say I'm happy narcissism is becoming something that people are talking about, because it's deep. It is so deep, and there are examples of it everywhere. We're seeing it on a national level. We
So kind
have
of
been.
like how my skin looks orange in this camera. We Yeah.
We're seeing
Uh-huh.
it on a national level. And
National
so,
level.
and global, like,
Mhm.
other countries are noticing what is going on here in our country, in the United States. And so narcissism, people are starting to see it. They're starting to see the elephant in the room and say, "Oh, look, there is something that, like, it's all there. It's all there." So I'm glad that people are talking about it. I'm glad that this is not, it's not flying under the radar anymore.
Mhm.
People are recognizing what it is. They're calling it out, and they're seeing it in all kinds of other systems,
Yeah.
family dynamics. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it because it wasn't talked about, but now people are talking about it.
Mhm.
And that's huge, because other people don't have to go 45 years of their life wondering, what is happening? Why? Why does this keep happening? I don't understand it. Because it's like, it's covert. It's like, it's very insidious. It's very like, it's like it's like that analogy of the frog in the water, and
Mm.
turning up the heat, and just
Turning up
not,
the heat in the water. Mm.
like, by the time it's boiling, it's like you can't get out of it. And this happens with family relationships, like I said, with friends, with bosses, with partners. Anybody could be a narcissist, but anybody could also have narcissistic tendencies and behaviors. And the truth of the matter is, it isn't really about them.
Mhm.
It's good to recognize, like, oh, that's a person I should stay away from. But what it's really about is us. It's really about us learning how to be responsible for our own power and our own choices.
Mm. So that what we it's showing us that we get to it's showing us the space, the opening where we like, do we stay as sort of a victim, or do we stay in this behavior that doesn't serve our living a greater life? Or So it's like it's showing us the choice almost. Like, here's a situation that you've been exposed to, and you can continue to keep bringing that in, or
Mhm.
you can turn the other way and say, I want to live my own life my own way. And how do I do that?
Yeah, yeah. It's, yeah, it's about stepping into our power and making powerful choices. Um, the codependency part is a belief that we're dependent on the other person for something for our survival. We are dependent on them in some way. So unless you are financially dependent on the narcissist or physically dependent on the narcissist, like you're probably just emotionally dependent.
Mm,
And that's something to look at, right? And what is that emotional attachment about? And how do you learn how to detach with love and focus on you? Another thing that who are codependent or grew up with narcissistic parents, along with the self criticism and the self judgment and the shame and the guilt, there's a pattern of self sabotage and not giving ourselves the care that we need because we learned we were not worthy
mhm,
of having that. We were love ourselves. We were taught to dislike ourselves so that we could be controlled by somebody else. So, finding our authentic self, embracing our authentic self, learning how to love our authentic self, learning how to be a loving inner parent to the child inside of us who did not get needed and wanted. We get to give that to ourselves. That's where, the self love comes in. That's where being curious instead of critical comes in. That's where learning how to lighten up, have fun, how to play comes in. I know for me, I learned not to feel anything. It wasn't okay for me to be angry. It wasn't okay for me to be sad. It wasn't even okay for me to be happy. That if I was too happy, it would be taken away from me just because it could be. It was a power thing and control. And so I learned not to let myself feel joy and happiness. If I was fun, the hammer came down. And so I learned if I had fun, it would be taken away from me. So I learned not to have fun. I learned how to take things very seriously. I thought if I could be perfect, maybe I'd get the love. Maybe I'd get positive attention. Maybe I'd be seen or recognized or validated. But the truth is that never happened. Because as long I'd just keep showing up and, like turning myself into a pretzel. So when I realized that, I had a choice, I'm an adult. I'm an adult woman now. I am self-sufficient. I do not need my mother anymore. If I love my mother and I want to have her in my life and she brings good things into my life and I enjoy my relationship with her, then yes, she can be in my life. But that's not the case with my mother at all. In fact, I am much happier not having any contact with her at all because I can have fun now. I can be me. I can learn like all kinds of new things that were never available to me before. New experiences, making different choices. I didn't know I could make different choices. I was never taught it was okay to change your mind. If I changed my mind, then I was like criticized and ridiculed for it. And it seems like such a simple thing, but if you've never experienced it, it's just like you don't know. It's like I like to think about it as like, that story about the tiger that was raised in captivity, and then they took it out into Africa, and they opened up the cage, and they're like, "Go." And the tiger is like, "I don't want to leave my cage. I don't know anything else except my cage." And that's what it's like until you have somebody to help you, like guide you out of the cage. Let me show you. Let me show you what it's like in another world.
Mm. Loving this so much. I'm sensing so much wisdom and generosity. I would love to talk about the concept of, or what you, how you define the word that is commonly used, the word trigger, and
Mhm.
how do you, for you, like maybe your mom does come in your presence and starts old behaviors, and things start coming up inside of you, and you're sensing that there is a, you're feeling triggered. Um,
Mhm.
how do you move through it? And perhaps how do you recommend a client, or someone that you're working with, how do you recommend that they move through it and, come around back to their authenticity, their integrity, their values?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. So, my experience with triggers, I recognize I'm triggered. I recognize it in my body first because the way the brain works is that you know, we have our primitive brain, our survival brain, where our memories are stored and our emotions are stored. And so when something happens, when one of my senses, well, there's two ways I can be triggered, internally or externally. So an external trigger would be something that I sense with my five senses, something that I see, something that I hear, something that I smell, a tone of voice, a facial expression, a time of the year. It could be anything. And I might not know what it is. I might not recognize what the trigger is, but I can feel it in my body because my I sense it, and then my brain, which acts that fast, my brain associates it to a memory, and my body responds on an unconscious level because we have this amazing nervous system that we're not conscious of, right? We don't think about our heart beating or breathing or our hormones. Like our body just does it all for us. So our body does it for us. So for me, when I'm triggered, or I like to also like to say activated, when I'm activated, my body responds in the way it's been, it's used to responding. So suddenly I'll get an adrenaline surge, or I'll get this feeling in my stomach that's icky, or I'll feel fear inside myself, or I'll feel angry. It's like a cocktail of hormones that happen in the body, and it's like my body responds, and I'm like, what's going on? That's the first part.
Mhm.
Recognizing what it feels like in your body when you're triggered, and then just taking a breath. That's fight or flight. So that's kind of natural almost. It's just breathing, and then like, what's going on? The second step I like to do is drop your shoulders, because when you're activated, you go into fight or flight and your body tenses up. That adrenaline hits. You either run away or fight or freeze. All kinds of things happen in the body. And the 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 primitive part of the brain takes over, and the front part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain, that that doesn't work so well. That kind of like defers to the survival part there, because your body thinks that you're in danger and you need to survive in some way. So the thinking part of your brain doesn't work very well anymore. So the first thing to do is to recognize I'm triggered. My body's going into fight or flight. So Am I really in danger? Am I really in danger in this moment? What's going on? Do I need to run? Is there a gun going off? Is there a tiger around the corner? No. Okay. Dropping the shoulders, breathing. That tells the body, wait a minute. We don't need to run. We don't need to fight. What's going on? Okay, maybe we don't need to keep dumping adrenaline into the body. Maybe we could stop. Maybe we can stop and see like what's happening, right? So that is a way to calm your trigger. It's anchoring. And there are lots of ways you can do anchoring. For me it's really a breath, dropping my shoulders, not responding, just thinking, what's going on? Am I in danger? If the answer is no, then I could just keep breathing and let my body diffuse that energy. Just let those hormones kind of like run their course a little bit, and then start thinking, activating my thinking part of my brain. What's really going on here? And I can make a decision, I can make a choice. I could say, I need to take a break right now. I'm going to go use the restroom, or, can I call you back? Or I'm going to go for a walk right now.
Mm,
Try to clear my head. Breathing is how we come back to the present moment and recognize, okay, what's really happening right now? What's really happening right now? Because many times, we will respond in the way we responded to situations in the past that were similar situations. So if my mother always slammed the door when I got in trouble, anytime I hear a noise like that, I'm going to think, "Oh, I'm in trouble." So really now, my mother is not here. She lives on the other side of the country and we don't have a relationship, but the door will slam and I might actually have a reaction to it. And then I get to ask myself, am I in danger? What's really going on? I'm not. I'm not in trouble. There was a door that slammed somewhere. That's all that happened. A door slammed. So then, it's like thinking, okay, what does that remind me of? It reminds me of when I got in trouble as a child. How am I feeling right now? It's bringing up those feelings. Okay, what does my child need right now? My child needs to hear from the adult self inside of me. You're safe, honey. It's okay. It was just a door. It was just a door. What do you need right now? What do you need? What do you need to feel safe right now? And sometimes that's all I need. I just need some reassurance that I'm safe. The good news is the more we practice this, the more we practice modulating our emotional responses, desensitizing to triggers, and learning how to access the thinking part of our brain more quickly each time with practice. It gets easier and easier, and we actually do desensitize to triggers. We will find after time and practice that things that used to bother us and set us off and in a spin maybe don't send us in as much of a spin or for as long, or maybe
mhm,
eventually not at all. So it is possible to rewire our brain. What we're doing, we're we're creating new neural pathways in our mind, and we're breaking the old ones. It's like forging a new trail through the jungle. It's like our brain wants to go down the well-worn path every time. But if we're like, nope, we catch it and we go, nope, we're not going to go down that old trail. We want to go down this new trail. And then this new trail is not as wide or easy to travel, and there's some rocks and some pitfalls along the way, and we might stumble, and we'll struggle. But the more we go down the new pathway, the more we forge that trail, the more that pathway opens up, and the old one will grow over with the jungle, and that new pathway, that new way of thinking, those new habits will become easy, more unconscious. It's
I
magic.
It's magic. It's magic and it takes practice, and that's okay. I heard a great quote recently that was, "Trust the process and do the work."
Yeah, yeah, it is work. It's like
Mhm,
it's awareness, it's conscious awareness,
mm,
and it's so easy to go on. We all do it. It's human nature, and that's why being supported and being immersed in the work, in the program, in the community, and reminded, like, remember, we're doing it this way now. Remember, we're doing it this way now. Remember, we're doing it this way now. That's the benefit of support and team,
yeah,
to make those changes, to make them last, make them real. Mhm.
awesome. And I'm remembering you mentioned a little bit earlier that you were wanting to bring or you got to a point where you were realizing you were stepping more profoundly into being playful. And I know that for me, how this series came about is talk about things you want to know more about. Talk about areas of your own personal weakness. And so living limitless and being playful are like the things that I am reaching for in my life that I have realized that I have been at times I am living from an old paradigm, an old belief system. And so I'm into the limitation, living from the limitation. And then there's a rigidity I find that kind of that comes with that. If you I know that for quite a few years I was really functioning as an automaton and just kind of going off of all the societal programming and intuition was pretty shut down. um, Spiritual community, I had shut that down for a few years. And anyway, so then the internal cry came out of like, this is not working anymore. This is not working. Time to turn the faucet of intuition back, time to turn the dial back up. And so I'd love to hear about your aspects of playfulness in your life and how they might help you step into greater personal freedom and power and feeling expansive.
Mhm. Yeah, I appreciate this question so much, and I'll be honest, I am still learning how to play. I am still learning how to be playful and have fun.
Mhm,
And because here's the thing. I had always heard about how inner child work was so important, and I didn't get it. I just didn't get it. I am like, I cannot connect to this inner child stuff. I just don't even know what to do with it. It seems weird to me. Like, I don't get it.
mhm,
And then somebody said to me, well, Pi, if you weren't allowed to be a child growing up, you never experienced being a child, which means that's why it's hard to connect to your inner child, because you never got to experience what it felt like to be connected as a child. And I
mhm,
was like, oh my goodness, you're right. So I get to learn how to connect to my inner child. I get to learn how to play. I get to learn how to be messy. I get to learn how to not do it well, and to be okay with it, right? I get to try new things, you know? Um I will try things and I'll be like, "Wow, I really like that." Or "I'm not sure I like that. Maybe I'll try it again." Or "Oh my gosh, that was awesome. I want to do it again," right? And sometimes preferences change, right? So sometimes something that I really, really loved, eh, I'm over it. I'm on to the next thing, like, give me something else. So I'm still learning. I am still learning how to connect with my inner child and how to play and have fun. I do know, and this is me. We're all different and unique snowflakes, but this is me. I enjoy getting in my body and feeling, feeling free enough to like move it around. Like, you know, dancing like nobody's watching, singing.
Mhm.
I like to sing. I never realized that I like to sing. My voice was shut down as a child. I was not allowed to speak my truth. And I was shut down. And I learned to shut up and play small, be quiet, don't be seen.
Mhm.
And so now I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got this voice, like, and I could sing, and I'm breathing. So I'm actually like, I'm doing that thing that anchors me, right? I'm breathing and I'm singing. I'm moving my body. I'm breathing and I'm moving. It's like those things are such good medicine for me in the best way.
Mhm.
And I'm learning how to have fun with other people, like how to have fun, like to lighten up, right? Just lighten up. I'm learning to laugh more. I'm learning just to laugh at the absurdity of things sometimes, right? Like I'm trying to make this thing work. The Zoom call won't go. It keeps like, and the neighbor is running a lawnmower and like everything's falling apart. Like instead of getting upset and crying about it and like laugh, laugh. It's it's life, It's like it's okay, I used to get in trouble over the smallest things. Everything was so serious, so intense. And it's like whenever I like, whenever I want to go down that path with myself, it's like laugh, laugh. Again, breathing. So, like just those three examples all come back to breath, right?
Yes. Wow, this is resonating big time because I'm the eldest child and my parents were very busy and there was the softball story was about me. Um, and so yeah, there was definitely a lot of criticism or interpreted as criticism in my brain. So I'm really hearing that instead of getting all tightly wound when things aren't going the way that you expect, and that's most likely learned, that like every moment is so serious and everything is reprimandable. Everything is reprimandable. So yeah, so to take ourselves more lightly, and then I find that I'm a parent. I have twins that just turned 7. And so at least when this recording was made, my twins had just turned 7. So I find that programming comes out in my parenting style, and that's an area of growth for me, that I get to show up. The way that I want to see the world is the way that I want to begin to parent, and teaching
Mhm.
them not to take themselves so seriously, and all of that. So it's really coming through the laughter and the dancing and singing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and there is one more component, I believe, to this healing process, and it's a spiritual component. And it has to do with learning how to trust and have faith in the unknown. And, whatever your affiliation is, whatever your spiritual connection is, it doesn't matter. It's that it's that learning how to let go of control and relax and allow the universe to show you what it is that you get to work on next, where it is that you get to grow, what it is you get to work through, what it is that doesn't serve you anymore. It gets really deep, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I really encourage my clients and people in my community to create new rituals in your life.
Would you tell us
Ritual
about yours? Would you tell us
certainly.
about your practices? I'd love to hear.
Oh, yeah, I've got lots. I've got lots of practices, but I mean, practices and rituals, they can be anything that you want as long as you're doing them consciously with an intention to connect to yourself or to your inner guidance or your wisdom. It could be God, it could be called God, it could be called spirit, it could be called universe, it could be called your inner wisdom. It could be called Bob. It doesn't matter, but it's consciously doing something for with an intention, whatever your intention is. So I like to start my morning with prayer. I have prayers that I recite. I have moments set aside for meditation. I have affirmations that I will repeat and say to myself. There's a ritual that I like to do where I have a little hand mirror, and it's a pretty little hand mirror, something pretty I picked up for myself, and I look in the mirror and I say hello to myself, and I tell myself I love myself, and I ask myself, "Who's in there that has something to say? Who wants to talk today? Who's got something to share?" Sometimes it's a very little girl. Sometimes it's a teenager, with an attitude, pissed off, rebellious, um, sexually overstimulated, like whatever it is, right? Like whoever is in there, whoever is in me gets a chance to be heard and recognized. And again, asking myself, well, what do you need? What do you want today? And sometimes sometimes I'll just cry and I'll be like, oh my goodness, there's some pain there. Like, let's pay attention to you. Let's hold that space for you. Let's ask some deeper questions. What's this about? What does this remind you of? What do you need? What do you want? And sometimes it's just pain. It could be just grief. It could just be whatever it is that's coming up. Being the conscious observer and aware of it, and I'm just like allowing it to be. I have a ritual I like to do when I want to release things. I have a burn ritual that I like to do. I write down what I don't want anymore. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Okay, let's release it. And I write it down and I burn it. I literally burn it. I burn it up and I say a prayer to the universe. I'm releasing this thing that no longer serves me. And by doing this, I vow to learn these lessons in a way that feels better and is for my higher good. And physically burning it up and releasing it. And then to fill the vacuum, because this is the important part. It's we talk about letting go of things. When you let it go, you got to replace it with something. Replace it with something you want. Get rid of the old jalopy in the driveway and bring in the Cadillac, or, the Lamborghini, or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Like, replace it with something that you do want. So then I call in what I do want. I'm like, well, I want to call in more fun. I want to call in more joy. I want to call in feelings of safety and security and abundance. So I write those down and I burn those too. And the reason is the burning is the releasing of the attachment to it.
Mm.
That's trusting the universe.
Wow.
Like, I'm I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there and I'm letting it go. And I'm not going to cling to it. I'm not going to attach to it. I'm not going to put that energy on it. I'm just going to let it go, and I'm going to trust and believe that it is going to come. And what choices can I make today that are in alignment with that wish, that
Mhm.
vision, that that ritual that I just did with intention? I still get to be intentional about the intention, but not attached to how it shows up. So those are a
I
couple.
I love that. I had heard the write and burn exercise many times, but I haven't heard it completely lines up though, filling the void because you're asking to transmute energy and to move it out. And so, a vacuum
Mhm.
is occurring. So why wouldn't you take that opportunity to call forward what you are wanting more of? And I like the idea of burning that too, so that you're not attached to the shape that it's in. It's not like this particular job for this particular company in this particular city, da 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 da. It's more like, greater fulfillment and abundant, as I hear what you're saying in regards to the attachment to what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah. Because when 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 we're connected to the divine, when we're connected to God, when we're connected to goddess, when we're connected to spirit, like it's greater than us. And it actually knows better than us, right? Like we think, oh well, if I just had this one thing, my life, and it's like, well, what if this other thing that's even bigger and better? And I know everybody's had this experience where you're like, man, like I really want this thing. And then what you end up getting, what ends up happening is bigger and better than you could have ever imagined, right? That's that's the letting go of the attachment. That's allowing the receiving of the manifestation of your intention.
Yeah. Instead of getting attached to what it looks like. I hear that. Wow.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm really just feeling so nurtured and nourished through this conversation, and I also want to open up space for allowing our audience member, our viewer, our listener to get to experience your work on an even deeper, more personal level. And so I understand that you have a gift that you'd like to share, and please tell us what it is and how we can access that.
Yeah, certainly. So my offering, my gift to you today is a free digital copy of my book. It's called Mother Medusa: Weaving Myth, Ritual, and Magic into Healing from a Narcissistic Upbringing. And you can access that by clicking on the link. Download your free digital copy. And in this book, I talk about my journey, learning about my mother and her condition, narcissistic personality disorder, and it's my journey. It's kind of my story, like how I pieced all these things together and how I learned how to use to transform my life. Because going back to the beginning of this interview and this conversation that we had, where I talked about how our habits and beliefs, are things that happen habitually over time, again and again and again. Rituals with intention is is the same action, behavior, thought, intention over and over and over again. So these rituals, and these were mine. Like there are many more. Many people will share theirs. You can make up your own, really. It's not it's not the vehicle that gets you there. It's the intention. It could be a plane, it could be a car, it could be anything, but doing something on a regular basis, a practice, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's where my when I began to show up for myself and believe myself important enough to take that time to do that for myself on a daily basis. And over time, the magic happened. The magic happened. It things started to manifest in my life. I began to create the things that I desired. And sometimes they looked exactly like I wanted them to. And sometimes it took me a while to recognize them and go, "Oh, that's that is what I asked for." um, I'm going to kind of change my order next time because it's not exactly the way I want it, but that's okay because we can change it, right? But that's the magic of this process of healing and claiming your personal power, claiming your authentic self, recognizing that we are powerful creators. We have more power than we could ever imagine. And we will create our lives and our reality consciously or unconsciously. So be conscious in your creation. Be conscious with your intention. And that the book kind of goes into that. I also tie it in, I weave it in with myth. Myth are those stories that we've been told, it's over thousands of years, right? They're stories with wisdom in them. They're lessons. They're like morals, and we can look back at those myths and we can learn about ourselves. They're little windows into ourselves. And so I weave the story of Medusa, as my mother, and what my experience was growing up with her, and what I learned from her, and what I've learned from the myth and the story, and how I'm the hero of my story, and how I changed my life. So
Mm.
it's a fun read. It's a short read. It's not incredibly long. You could probably finish it in an evening, but it is, it's my story. It's more about me, and it's a taste of what I offer, working with my clients.
It sounds amazing. I grew up, we did a lot of camping, and my mom would look up at the stars. And I found out many years later that she didn't actually know a lot of the stories, but she would take the shape of the stars and kind of try to remember what she could, and then weave these amazing stories, and sometimes involving Medusa and Zeus and, all of these amazing stories. So I actually grew up listening to a lot of them. It's just that when I asked her years later, she was she wasn't sure. She's like, I don't really remember that. But yeah, I love the idea of you sharing from the heart, and then also, you know, getting to bring in what we've been told, these great stories from the past.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a journey of self exploration, and we're all on our own journey. We are all exactly where we're supposed to be at every moment. So if you're at the beginning of your journey, just know you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And it's up to you to decide where you want to go next. And there are many, many choices out there. There are all kinds of things that you can learn. And there are all kinds of people out there who can help you. And if you grew up with a narcissistic parent, and you're really, you're struggling with that, then I would love to connect and see how I can support you.
Well, I hope everyone listening at least checks out the link below to access, however many people you're letting in the door from when we release this interview. But I hope you check that out. And I just really am in such gratitude for your time and your generosity and your sharing from the heart.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It has been an honor.
Thank you. And I would like to say thank you, audience member. I am Andrea Luzon. We have been talking with Pi Venus Winslow today, and you have been a part of Living Limitless, Play Your Way to Freedom. I can't wait to talk with you again next time. Until then.
Bye.